There are so many kinds of clocks. It's cool how something for the simple purpose of telling you the time can have so many different personalities. This one came in for repairs recently. It's from the late 80s or early 90s, and it's done in the Memphis style that was popular back then. It has neon lighting on the dial, and a swinging pendulum mechanism that would have let you attach neon tube lights in different shapes. Sadly, this one didn't come with any of these, and I'm not sure how to get more. They might have been made specifically for this clock, and since I can't find any reference pictures of what the connections were like, I'm not even sure what to look for as far as getting custom new ones made. If you have an idea, leave me a comment.
Come on, let's play!
This one also didn't come with its AC adapter, so I had to order one from Amazon. I also had to get this right angle adapter since the clock can't sit flat otherwise. The good news is the neon lights up, the pendulum stem swings, and the clock itself runs. But there are a couple of small problems. The tip of the minute hand scrapes the inside of the glass, as you can see by this fine ring, and the pendulum stem has this spring sticking out, which is really noisy when the stem is swinging. I also got a mild shock from accidentally touching it while the clock was plugged in, so that's a hazard that needs to be fixed. I think it's part of one of those contacts for the neon pendulums that would have fit into the stem. Hopefully nothing's broken off inside and it's just a matter of opening the clock and reseating this contact. Let's see what's inside. So the pendulum, this little pin just came out of there. Okay, right away I think I see the problem. Let's get a little more light in there. So this is the pendulum that's supposed to swing back and forth. You can see there's a spring connected to this contact, this piece of metal. There's a little bitty channel that goes along right there and then up like that. So that piece of metal should be sitting inside there. So this is another interesting thing. See, this here is a standard quartz clock movement. You can find that in just about any other quartz wall clock, like here's another one, except the battery sits there directly inside of it. They took a standard quartz clock motor and wired it up so it could go to this custom housing for the battery on the outside of it. It looks like they've drilled out a hole in the middle of where the battery goes there for this rod of the pendulum to sit through. I want to be really careful not to desolder this little bit of spring here. So that's fit back into place. Now there is a gap between this part of the metal and this part of the metal, so I can't tell if this is supposed to connect to that or if this is supposed to just remain open. If I leave it like this, at least it should swing back and forth without this metal contact hanging out and zapping me. This feels like an electromagnet. The tip of my screwdriver is actually magnetized to, I guess, a magnet in here. So that repels this and it swings back and forth. It's just hot glued in place. Turn it on. You can also hear this buzzing pretty bad. Not sure if there's a good way to fix that sound. If you want to take the legs off, pull out these pins and then the legs could come out of the clock. Wiring does go down this one to go down into the battery compartment and the plug outlet. And lining that up with this hole as we're closing this up is going to be tricky. We can kind of angle the rod by holding the pendulum down here. Oh, see how easy it is to come out? Feels secure. Oh crap, we still gotta mess with the front face of the clock. Let's at least see if this mechanism is working now. Already, just flicking that with my finger, it's a lot less noisy. Plugged in, and yeah, that's a lot quieter. See how it wants to just go when power is applied to it, even without the neon on. So now we gotta bend back that minute hand so it won't drag along the glass anymore. So I'm looking around inside here to see if any of this can lift out, and this all seems to be one monoblock piece of plastic. Even if I were to take the quartz movement out, then what would happen is the hands would fall off. The motor would pull out from the other side, and then these hands would just be loose in here, and there would be no way to put it back together. So what I'm guessing is this glass was put on from the front, and that maybe this kind of rounded lip is a retaining ring. What I do have is this crummy little putty knife. It's made out of plastic. It does move a little bit, but this is unfortunately a little bit too thick, so perhaps a toothpick? These are probably not going to be strong enough. Let's try this. Ah, that's what it was. See this little rectangular protrusion here? There's about 6 of them going all the way around. And now that glass should be able to just fall out. See how that minute hand is kind of bent outwards? We just want to bend it straight down a little bit. Ah, okay, this is plastic. I thought this was going to be metal. And we're going to take this use a hairdryer on it and run it under some cold water to hopefully straighten that out. That seems to have helped. When you're putting the hands back on a clock, the easiest way to get them lined up is to just set everything at 12 o'clock. Air duster. These seem to move smoothly. Can hear it. Battery cover back on. Seems to be working great now. Only thing is it does kind of wobble back and forth, and I think that is due to the power cable being a little too thick. I can either notch out a little bit of this red plastic, or I could put some rubber feet on the bottom of this. I think I'm gonna go with the rubber feet because that's a more non-destructive modification. There we go, that looks pretty good. Nice and even. By the way, this is what I use. It's these little Scotch bumper pads. I almost forgot to show you this. There is a second battery compartment underneath the clock that can power the neon with 7 AA batteries. That's a lot of batteries, so I'm gonna stick to using the power adapter, but why don't we see if it works? That does work. So this would have been helpful if I wasn't able to find a power adapter. I could have at least still tested the neon. Here's another cool thing. On this lower battery compartment is this special screwdriver for setting the time. The other end is this large Phillips head, which I'm not really sure what that's supposed to go to on this clock. The tip end is this little cross-shaped head. You put that through this hole in the back of the clock, and that lines up with the clock motor, and that's how you adjust the time. If I didn't have this, I would probably reach in there with a little flathead screwdriver or something. That's looking really good. The wobble's not too bad. I would really like to do something about this stump though. It would look cool if there was a pendulum there. Since we can't do a neon pendulum right now, I'm thinking of something simple and geometric to go with the rest of the design language of the clock. Thinking of a simple pendulum shape, but maybe a 3-dimensional ball. So I've got a couple of different size wooden dowels we could use as the stick for the pendulum, and we could use one of these wooden balls as the pendulum weight. In order to fit the dowel in place, I needed to drill a hole into one of the balls. But getting that hole straight is hard to do by hand. My dad had the idea of taking a plank of wood and then using a drill press to make a hole with a slightly smaller diameter than the ball to hold it in place. Then we'd use the drill press to make a hole in the ball for the dowel. The ball kept slipping when we'd use the drill, so we used a rubber glove to help hold it in place a little better. The hole wasn't perfectly straight, but it worked well enough. After that, we filed down the end of the dowel so it could fit inside the swinging pendulum stem on the clock. We used a chisel to get the majority of material removed, and then switched to using sandpaper to refine it. The part of the dowel you see inside the drill chuck right now is going to be cut off later when I adjust the length of the pendulum, so it doesn't matter if that small section of wood gets chewed up by the jaws of the chuck. That fits in there pretty well. It's not perfectly straight on, but I think it'll look fine. Now I gotta hold this up to the clock and see at which point I need to cut this off. So if we slide the stem over, we can get an idea of how this will fit. See how it pushes those springs apart a little bit? But it does want to stop right there. It looks like we're gonna need to cut 1/8 of an inch off from the end of this because I want this ridge to be flush with this edge as much as possible. Since this will likely fall out, I'll probably put a little bit of hot glue around this tip and let that dry just to give these contacts something a little bit more to grip onto. Also going to use this to get a rough idea of how much of this I need to cut off. So this was something cool my dad let me borrow. It is a jig that can put these dowels into. So you line up where you want to cut with the edge of this, and then you take this Japanese handsaw, and this straight edge not only helps guide the saw back and forth, but this is magnetic, so it'll hold the saw in alignment. I'm actually going to cut off a little bit further down so we still have some wood to work with. That way if we make a mistake, I didn't cut too much off. Very nice. Test this on the clock. Yeah, let's try it with the ball. That should be enough clearance. I might want to cut just a little bit more off though. I say let's take off about that much more. Marshmallow. Yeah, that looks nice. And just imagine this yellow and this black. Ah, one of the springs fell out of this. Unfortunately, I got to disassemble this thing again and put that spring back in place. Now you can see the clock motor moving. While I've got this open, you can see this is the knob that you would turn to adjust the clock. If you look inside this hole, it's actually fluted. There are little grooves that go down that act as a key for this cross tip to fit inside of. On a normal clock where this would just be exposed on the back, you would just twist that with your finger. Stay this time. Yeah, I think that's gonna work. I just need to adjust this a little bit. Yeah, that fits a little better. I think we're ready to move on to painting this. Time to paint. Black should be easy, so I'll do that last. I do have this yellow, and I could leave it like this, or I could try to make it a little more neon like the Minute Hand. Try a little bit of titanium white. It's a little too much. And a hint of phthalo green. Ooh, that's dark. Really do want just a hint of that. Way too green. A little bit of that. Yeah, it's just yucky looking. That's looking pretty close. Yeah, I think that's a pretty close match. We use the cutoff piece here. Run into two problems. I'm not especially happy with this. It's very gloppy looking. And also, I've run out of that mix, so now I've got to mix it again, and it may not be exact. Well, that looks terrible. I think the paint is a little too thick. It also might be drying out. I'm gonna sand this off and try to thin it out a little bit with some water. I'm gonna try this 220 grit right now. It's a little coarser than the finest grit that I have, but a little softer than the roughest grit that I have. Too bad I don't have any paint stripper. We're making a dent, making a lot of powder though. Probably shouldn't be breathing this in. All right, that's not too bad. I actually went and sanded it over the sink and did a little bit of wet sanding too. So I've mixed up some paint and water. We're gonna see how well this goes on to the freshly sanded ball. Yeah, that's going on a little more smoothly. It's just gonna need multiple coats. This is looking a lot smoother. In between this, I'm gonna sand the coats to see if I can make it a little bit smoother. That's after sanding. Took off some of the yellow, but not a whole lot. To speed up the process, I've been drying this off with a hairdryer in between coats. Then I sand it, wipe it down with a damp paper towel, paint it, and repeat. I'm happy enough with that. It's not a perfectly smooth finish, but I think this will look pretty good on the clock. Mix this up with a little bit of water. Have our piece. This is already going on a lot smoother. There it is. Now we'll fit these together. That looks pretty good. I was gonna glue these together, but honestly this friction fit is pretty good. And if I don't glue it, that gives me some flexibility in the future if I ever want to take these apart and spray paint or airbrush them. So the yellow ball doesn't quite match the yellow of the Minute Hand, but the red hour hand doesn't quite match the red cone at the bottom, so I think that balances it out. I think that looks pretty good. I think that's gonna work really well. So the next part is going to be adding some hot glue to the tip of this so that it won't slide out of here so easily. I'm thinking a little ring or a couple of blobs right around here where these contacts kind of splay out. Now I want to clarify, I'm not hot gluing the pendulum to the clock. I'm just adding hot glue to the tip of this stem to give it a little bit more of a grip. Let's mark about where this needs to go. I made a little mark right there. That's where I'm going to add some hot glue. That's really all we need, is just little dots like that. That might even be a little too much. Let's see if that works. Okay, that kind of works. If you put it in and twist. Oh no, 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 no! Come on. Okay, I got the metal reseated. I think we're gonna have to trim down some of this hot glue just a little bit. I may add a little bit of hot glue to the top of that, just so that this doesn't keep coming out. I think this will hold well enough. It really just needs to stop it from falling straight down. There's that stupid spring again. I think I'm actually gonna hot glue that in place. Here's the clock all put together. So far, everything works great, and I think it's a beautiful piece. I love the geometric design paired with the neon dial. I like the way the pendulum turned out. I think it's a nice substitute for the neon pendulum it would have originally come with. I got curious about the history of this clock, so I did some research. The back of the clock says it was made in Taiwan by the APA Electronic Company. They're evidently still around today, assuming that's the same APA from Taiwan. From the few pictures I found of the clock online, it was retailed as the Neon Pendulum Clock under the brand Future Zone. I haven't found anything else under that branding, so I don't think it was widespread. I did find a couple of old websites that still have listings for the clock, Asia.ru and Token Sales. According to the copyright date, Token Sales hasn't updated their website since 2002, so we can probably assume that the clock is at least that old. The Memphis design was most popular in the 80s and 90s, so I'm thinking the clock model is a little older than 2002, but sometimes trends from the previous decade carry over into the next one, so it could be from 2002. Outside of those websites, this clock looks kind of like the thing you would have bought at Spencer Gifts in the 90s or 2000s. I looked around their website on the Wayback Machine, but I didn't find any listings for it. It could have come from any novelty store though. By the way, this is a real neon light. Most novelty lights labeled as neon today are just LED strip lights encased in diffused plastic tubing to simulate the look of neon. This clock was made the old-fashioned way. It's a real glass tube filled with gas and vacuum sealed with a cathode and anode to make the gas glow when electricity is supplied. Or that's a simplified version of how it works. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you had fun. See you next time.